Welcome, everybody. As Suzanne said, the number of things have changed in ezEML, been added to ezEML since last October when we did our first webinar on it. But assuming that not everyone had, saw that presentation, and certainly not everyone who views this recording will have seen that. I'm going to go through the whole thing, but place emphasis on the things that have changed and been added. Do more, go into those in more detail. So the overall idea, of course, is this is a web-based, form-based editor for the Ecological Metadata Language. You're probably all familiar with that. It's XML standard for providing metadata to describe a data set, especially an ecological data set. The general idea of the layout of the application or the website is that there's a user guide that tells you in some detail how to use the program. So you can come back to that later. There's a news, which what as things change, so you come back to it. You can say, oh, what changed since the last time I was here. But the main things are that there's a contents list, which is basically the major sections of an EML metadata document and the pages that support entering and editing that metadata. There are help buttons all over the place. Some of the help, like here, the first thing here is a title. That this help is sort of describing what the EML standard expects in the way of a title. So this is more of a help about EML. And then there's other help, like this help, that is more about how to use ezEML itself. So most of the time, you don't necessarily have to be an expert in EML to use ezEML. That's the idea. There's always, this appears a home button, so you can always come back to this title page by clicking there. Now, as we move through a document, we will be stepping through these sections in the content. So we can use the ezEML as a wizard, basically just stepping us through, or we can jump to a particular section, just by clicking on it. But for the most part here, I'm going to use it as a wizard. The one thing to point out that this is new since the previous webinar is that there's a check metadata which tells you what needs to be added or fixed, and there's now an indicator, like a traffic signal, green, yellow, red, that indicating whether or not there are errors or warnings. And at the moment, there is at least one error. If I click there, I can see that, EML requires at least one contact, and I haven't defined that yet. And there's some warnings. I ought to have more keywords than I do. So some of the errors are things that are required by EML, and some of them are best practice things that you really ought to have more keywords. Now, going back to where I was, title, excuse me. So for example, if I take out this title and just put in a short one, I go back and check metadata. Oh, it's telling me my title really should be longer. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that will. So as you go through, you can sort of keep an eye on your progress by looking at that indicator. So I'm going to put back the original title. And now, okay, I went a little too quickly there. I put in the title and then I click save and continue. Generally speaking, on all these pages, if you do save and continue, it takes you to the next step. And as you go through, the things that you're entering are saved. So you're sort of building up the EML document as you go. And you don't have to worry about things being lost. It's sort of like you're just filling out one giant form, and the earlier entries are preserved as you go on to the later entries. So I've put in a title, save and continue. It takes me to the next step, which is data tables. Now, this kind of layout is something that you'll see repeatedly in ezEML, where here's another example, where you just have a list of things with up and down arrows, so you can change the order of things in the list, and then buttons to edit a particular item or to remove it, and then a button down here to add another one. So going back to data tables, right now I already have 2 data tables that I've added to this package that we're working on. You can edit, create the metadata for a data table from scratch, but the way that you're most likely to do it is by uploading a CSV, comma separated value file a text file that you've already created with a data table. And then ezEML will read that CSV file and infer a lot of the metadata for the table. So let me just do that real quick. Load. Now, this in the prior version, this wasn't true. That now you can have tabs separated and so on. It doesn't have to be comma separated. I'm going to pick a sample file here, upload. And now this takes me to a page. ezEML has that CSV file has been uploaded to ezEML, and ezEML has interpreted what's in it and filled in a number of entries in the metadata that it's able to infer. So the checksum, the size of the file, the number of rows in the table, and so on. There are some things that it can't fill in, like the description text of sort of a text description of that table. So let me just put something in there, and it has found the columns in the table, excuse me, but and it has inferred a lot of the characteristics of those columns. There are 4 different kinds of columns. They can be date, time, categorical, numerical, or text. And I have some, examples of each in this just sample file. And it was able to figure, let me just real quick bring up the, this is the CSV file here. And you see it has a year column, a column which is a categorical variable, and so on. Okay, and that's what we're looking at here. So the year column, it figured out that it was a date time, and if we go and look at it, it inferred that the format string is YYYY, 4-digit year. It can't know the definition, so I'll put that in. If there were missing value codes, it would attempt to pick those up, and so on. Let me point out also, as we go here, since I've uploaded this table, there are a number of things that we have to fill out about this table. That if I look at check metadata again, so I'm going to jump down here and click. There are, under the data table section, there are a number of things now that have to be filled in. And one nice thing here is I don't have to go hunt them down. I just, okay, here's a column whose definition is required. Well, which one is it? I just click on it and it takes me to the column. And it's the second column was categorical. I'll put in a definition for it. Now, if I go look at it's a categorical column, so it's like a factor in R, it's a number of codes. If I go look at that, ezEML was able to pick up what the values are, but it can't know the definitions of them. So let me put those in real quick. Now, if I go back and look at check metadata, the list of problems with that data table is shrinking because I'm filling things in. Column definition here, this is, okay, now this is a numerical column. Numerical columns require, the standard requires a unit for each numerical column. There are a number of standard units that are defined by the the standard. So I pick one here. In this case, it picked up the fact that there was a missing value code in that column. Here's another numerical column. Let's say this one has a custom unit. So it's a unit that was not in my list of standard units. So I'll just drop that in. Picked up a missing value code, which happened to be different in that column. And finally, the last column was a text column. So I put in its characteristic, its attribute. And now if I look at check metadata, there are no more problems with the data tables. So that's good. Now let's say one of the things one of the things that's been added is that you have the ability to re-upload a table. And there are a couple of reasons for this. If you modify the data in a table, so I go back to my sample table, and let's say I put in a value here, I realized, or I added some rows or deleted some rows. I made changes to the data in the table. I didn't change the structure of the table, but I changed the data. Now my metadata for that table will be incorrect. The checksum and the size, for example, are not valid. They're not correct anymore. They're not in sync with the table anymore. So I want to re-upload. And there's another reason for this too, as we'll see later. We've set things up now so you can sort of in one click submit your metadata and your data tables to EDI. And so the data tables that will be sent to EDI will be whatever version you've uploaded. So you want it to be the most recent, most correct version. So I've modified that CSV file. So let me go back and do re-upload. And I'm going to, in this case, pick the same CSV file. It actually doesn't have to have the same name. It could be, new sample or something. Re-upload. And now the checksum has changed, the size has changed, and so on. However, if I go now and look at one of the columns where I filled in a bunch of stuff, it's all still there. And that's the point, is that the re-upload lets me bring the data up to date without having to re-enter all the metadata information. A re-upload expects that the structure of the table is essentially the same. The columns are in this same order. You can have additional categorical codes added and that kind of thing, but mostly it's expected to be the same. And if I'm not clear on that, if I look at let me back up, sorry. Look at the help, it tells me more about it and what things can be different and what things shouldn't be different. And if you're in doubt, you just try the re-upload, and ezEML will say, no, I'm sorry, that table has changed too much. You can't use re-upload. So what do you do then? Let's suppose you've added a column, or you've made some other more significant change, or let's say you have another table, you're measuring essentially the same parameters, but at different locations or something like that. So you have multiple CSV files which have essentially the same parameters, maybe with a couple changes. Are you going to have to re-enter all that metadata again? And the answer is no. There's a new feature that lets you clone column attributes from one table to another. So here let me just show you the table real quick before I do that. This was the original sample table, and here's another one, sample 2, which has many of the same columns, but they're in different orders and they have different names. And then it has so it has a year instead of a year placed in the field. It has an arm as the last column instead of plot arm as the second column, and so on. And it has a new column that wasn't in the first table, has this new growth. Okay, but it's got a lot of the same columns, and I want to exploit that fact. So I'm going to upload that table, sample 2, and now instead of going in and editing the column properties, what I'm going to do is use this clone column properties from another data table. So I click that. Now that it's asking me what package do I want to take the properties from? There's a table somewhere that I want to take the properties from. Where is it? Well, it's in this case, it's in the current data package that I'm doing. So I'll open that. Which table is it? It's the sample table. And then which columns am I going to reuse? Well, it's going to be the year, the plot, and let's say the net primary production. Now, by the way, you can do this sort of one at a, you can do a column or two and then come back and do another column or two. In cases where you have tables with lots and lots of columns and you don't want to do them all at once, that's perfectly fine. But I'm going to do those 3, select the columns. Now, so those are in the sample, the table called sample, those are the columns that I'm reusing, I'm cloning. Which ones do they correspond to in my current table? Well, year placed in field corresponds to year. Plot arm corresponds to arm. Net primary production corresponds to primary production. Okay, so I've said how they match up, and now I clone them. Ask me, are you sure? Yes. All right, now if I look at the sample 2 table, and I go in and look at some of these columns, like year, that was one of the ones I cloned. Well, it picked up the definition. It's got all the stuff, so I don't have to do anything there. Likewise, arm, which had categorical codes with definitions, it got all those. So it made my life much easier. And not only does it make life easier, but it's sort of a baby step in the direction of data standardization, metadata standardization. Now there's still a couple of, we didn't do every column, so there's still a few columns in there that where I have to enter the required metadata. Let's see what else. I just clicked check metadata to remind me. Oh, okay, it's the site name. I didn't clone that one, so let me do that. Okay, and now if I click check metadata again and go back and look, well, now I don't have any problems with those data tables anymore. So that was by cloning the properties there, that was a lot easier than having to type them all in from scratch. Let's say now I'm done. Those are my data tables. So I'm done with that section. Save and continue takes me to the next thing, which is creators. These are people or organizations that are the creators of this data package and deserve to be cited for it. And if I go look at one of those, this layout is used over and over whenever there's a person, organization, or position that has to be described. That's EML calls them responsible parties. You can go in and edit that, or you can add a new one. But let's just say I'm happy with these, and I will go on. Now contacts, and if you remember, check metadata said that contacts, I have a problem because at least one is required. So let me go back to contacts. Now I can add them by filling out the responsible party form, or I can, there's a ezEML gives you the ability to import from elsewhere. So in this case, what I'm going to do, let's say that a couple of the creators are actually also the contacts. I can go up to import here, import responsible parties from the same data package. So it's sort of a import in quotes, it's within the same file. And let's say these 2 creators are actually also contacts. So I pick who they are and how I want them to be imported. I want them to be contacts. Click import, and there they are. Okay, now if I go, my check metadata went from red to orange because it's all I have left is warnings now. It's not complaining about the missing contacts anymore. Save and continue, associated parties. It's again, just another one of these people. So let's assume that I'm happy with that. Save and continue. Metadata providers, again, it's a person. In this case, we don't have one. Abstract, the usual thing of, like an abstract for a paper, just a bunch of text. Keywords. Now, one of the things that Check Metadata complained about was that I don't have enough keywords, and keywords are good because they allow your data to be findable and reusable, and you get citations. So let's add a keyword. You can either just type in a keyword freeform, or there's the LPER controlled vocabulary. So I'll just pick a keyword at random there and save and continue. Now I have 5 keywords, and that's actually enough to make check metadata happy. So I could add a bunch more, but I'll go on. Intellectual rights, the CC0, Creative Commons CC0 or CC BY are provided as default options. The chosen one by default is CC0, or you can put in another one. But we're happy with CC0, we'll go on. Geographic coverage, these are bounding boxes with the 4 coordinates defining the edges of the box. You can type them in, or you can load the geographic coverage from a CSV file. And there's description here of what the CSV file needs to look like. I'll just go on. Temporal coverage is, these are times, so you can have a bunch of different time periods where your data was collected, or a single time. In this case, we just have one time period, but you could add more. I'll go on. Excuse me. Taxonomic coverage. Here you can have the ezEML will look up a hierarchy, taxonomic hierarchy for you. So let's say I'm interested in common mouse. I'm going to look it up so I don't have to put in the taxon rank. And let's say I go to NCBI, fill the hierarchy. This will take a few seconds. It has to make a bunch of round trips on the internet to the NCBI service. And it came back with the full taxonomic hierarchy for mouse. And each of these taxon ranks, there's a link out to, in this case, NCBI, because that was the taxonomic authority that we used. I can save this. So now I have mouse in there. Okay, let's say I'm done with taxonomic. Go on. Maintenance. EML standard calls for at least one. No, actually, because maintenance is optional. Never mind. There's a description and then a frequency, which is there's a number of choices there in the standard. I'm happy with that. I'll go on. Publisher and publication info. If you are submitting to EDI, just leave these blank, because EDI will fill this in when your package is uploaded to our repository. In this case, we are going to go to EDI, so I will just leave them blank and go on. Publication info, same story. Methods, your EML requires at least one method step. And sorry, here, edit. See what it looks like. It's a description, and then you can have instrumentation. And again, there's help that describes what EML expects, what it means by method step. What does it mean by instrumentation? But let's say I'm happy with that. I go on. Project. Projects have personnel, so a list of people. And again, you can import those. You don't have to retype them. They have any number of funding awards associated with them. And then they can have related project. This is new. This wasn't in the original version. But a related project basically just looks like a primary project. The point of having a number of related projects is it lets you have different PIs with different funding awards noted. Let me go on. Other entities is means other than data tables. These are things that are associated with your data package that aren't just data tables. So for example, an R scripts. So here I have some R scripts, and I upload those, and then again, ezEML infers what it can. It doesn't know the description, but I'll put that in. Save and continue. Okay, data package ID. If you are submitting to EDI, you can leave this blank if you would like, and we will, when the packages are submitted, we will assign you a data package ID. A data package ID is required by the EML standard, but we'll handle that for you. If you have a data package ID, for example, your LTER site manager has, your information manager has assigned you one, then you go ahead and put it in, but you don't need to. And in this case, I'm going to leave it blank. And I've finished the entire wizard. I've gone through the whole sequence. So the last thing it does is bring up check metadata one more time. It's warning me, or it's it's reminding me that data package ID is required by EML, but if you're going to go to EDI, you don't have to put one in. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That's fine. And now submit to EDI, and this is new. And what happens here, you put in your name, basically a contact for EDI to get back to you, and whatever notes you want to put in. So for example, if there were a couple things that are still missing, but you weren't sure what to do about them, you can put in an explanation for and then what happens is this will go to the EDI data curation team, and they will take a look at it, and I'll show you that in a sec. So I'll put in, this is a test, please disregard. And I send it. What happens is that my XML, my metadata, and the things I've uploaded, my data tables and my other entities, are all packaged together and sent automatically to EDI. And we bring up this email just came in to the support at environmentaldatainitiative.org. And so this is what the data curator will see, is basically just what we typed in. That'll be the one thing here that's surprising perhaps, is that there's a download URL. What this is where the package is. The ezEML packaged it up in a zip file and posted it on the server where the data curator can download it. Rather than attaching it to the email itself, do it this way, because the package may well be too large for to be attached to an email. So then the data curator would click on that, which downloads the package. Let me show it in the. So here it is. It came in, and then what they would do is import that package into their ezEML account. They can then edit it, fix it, add the data package ID, do whatever's needed to get it ready. If they've made changes to it and they want to then send it back to you, so you have the updated and fixed version, then they would use export ezEML data package. When you do that, it reminds you that you want the current version of everything, because everything's going to be packaged along with it. Let's say you're happy. Then it's the same kind of thing. It gives you a download link where this exported package is available. And besides the interactions with the EDI team, another application of this is you might want to send the package to a collaborator. You know, you are, let's say you're a grad student working in a lab and you want to send this to your PI. I don't know, you know, all sorts of scenarios. Then you can package it up, and then rather than email it to them, you can just copy the URL, and then now that URL is in my clipboard, and I can put it in an email, and then whoever the recipient can then download it. Okay, so there's the import and export give you the ability to send packages back and forth. There's also, and maybe perhaps I should have pointed out that this import export menu, these things above the line here, these are things where you're importing stuff like we did. We imported people within the data package, or we could import geographic coverage information, taxonomic, etc. Then this could be from other data packages that we've done in the past, or you could even make a sort of a library of incomplete packages that just have a bunch of responsible parties in that you just use as a source for importing into other packages that you're working on, that kind of thing. But, and then these things below the line, these are for actually importing and exporting the package as a whole, or for downloading the EML file. And why don't we do that real quick. This is what an EML file looks like. You know, perhaps you've seen these before. This is just, it's a big XML file, and it's quite complex. And it's got everything in it that we have built up, but it's all in this XML format, and it has the, you know, the various nodes have the needed attributes and that kind of stuff. So it's producing one of these things by hand is non-trivial, but ezEML has done that for you. Now in this case, oh, by the way, what I'm looking at here, this is Oxygen, which is an XML editing application. There are various other tools like this. In this particular case, the Oxygen is saying, well, this isn't valid, and the reason is because we haven't yet put in the data package ID, and that is a required element. Other than that, it's totally valid. And when the data curation team adds a data package ID, then it will be good to go. So let me just stress that when you submit to EDI, what you're doing is you're communicating with the EDI data curation team. You're sending your proposed metadata and data files to a EDI data curator. So there's a human in the loop, and they will look at your data, fix any problems that are there, and perhaps reply with some recommendations, you know, some best practice kinds of things. But they, you know, they will help. And the point there is that you shouldn't expect, when you click submit EDI, don't expect your data package to immediately show up in the EDI data repository. There's a step in the middle where our curators take a look. They will get back to you. That's why you're asked to provide a name and email address so they know who to contact. And they will let you know when it's been submitted, or if there are changes that you need to make. And I think, and that's, I don't know if you've done, if you've submitted packages to the EDI repository before, you know, you had to go to the data portal, and you have to reserve a data package ID, and you have to upload your tables and all that. This sort of simplifies that, hopefully simplifies that process. And I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Oh, I just will point out real quick, a number of in the forms as we go, perhaps this is obvious, but the things with an asterisk are required, and some things are recommended, and some things are optional. And the required things are generally all at the top of a form. And I think that's it. So, Suzanne, I will toss the baton to you.